Welcome to Divine Times. My name is Hilton Milan. I'm with my friend and entrepreneur colleague, Hugh Reilly, of that channel. Hugh.
Hilton, thank you for having me on your show.
Well, thank you for having me in your premises. You know, you have really been instrumental in my life and impactful in witnessing in my time around you in the last 8 years, since we've known each other and began to work a bit together, I guess about 7 8 years ago, I've seen hundreds of people, towards the 1,000, just in that time period, that have come through that channel as an internet web, a little community miracle in my view, that is an unsung hero. I'm wanting to take this time with you and with our viewers to recognize, and maybe even find ways that we can contribute and co-create and collaborate towards that channel, in all these divine times. Mm-hmm. Manifesting, I'm going to use the word bohemian success, mm-hmm. which is like village success, and the soul entrepreneurs like you, and not just the hundreds that I've met through here, but I believe it's tens of thousands over the last almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
Would you talk about some of your genesis, up to now, and maybe what you see as, the most welcome future?
Okay. Very well. Where do I begin? I'm not going to tell the story of how that channel itself started, just because I've told that story before. But
all right.
But when in the '90s, we started a magazine.
Yes.
And the magazine was, now I'm a business graduate.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So I have education using words like target market and stuff like that.
Yes.
But when we started the magazine, we didn't start it as a business per se. We didn't start with, okay, let's have a business, and let's we're going to publish a magazine, and we're going to do it to make money, and we have a target market, and this is our revenue strategy. It was more of an impulse, and actually an impulse that's been with me for my whole life, to really just look at the world around us. There's been alarm bells sounding since I first gained consciousness in this life, and alarm bells like environmental problems, overpopulation, pollution, economic problems, war, food scarcity. I mean, all these things that none of us wants in our lives, and yet, we live in a world that's got all these things going on, right? How do we deal with these seemingly insoluble problems, right? How do we pave a clear path to the future, and yet all of us still live decent lives, right, without undue suffering? So that's been my driving purpose from the beginning. And you say right from the beginning of your conscious experience, is there 14, 4, 24? Is there a pivot point? Well, it started. My memory goes back quite a way. I remember watching TV, and having a news break, breaking into regular programming.
Yes.
To hear about that President Kennedy was shot, right?
I remember that too.
So I was a little kid, and being a little kid, I was just probably more concerned that the cartoons had been interrupted. But I do remember also thinking, because the first report said that he was had been shot in the head and was taken to the hospital, and I remember saying to myself, "Gee, I hope he's okay."
Yeah.
Right, and
Yeah.
then
I did too. I remember the same and remember the same thing.
and then thinking that, and then hearing like minutes later that
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
he died. I mean, as a little kid, that didn't really
Yeah.
impact. It didn't really. I mean, it was, of course,
A
it was
president
sad,
of a
right?
country, and
But I
you're
mean,
like-
I was like probably, what was I? I don't know, two or 3 years old.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really. But anyways, but that was a horrible thing, right? And
Yes.
and what did that mean? I didn't know at the time
Yeah.
what the long-term implications of all that were, or what it was all about. I didn't know about any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember another time also, not around the same time. One night, my parents were saying, "Oh, we're all going to sleep in the basement tonight." And I thought, "Oh, that's great!
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have a little fun
Yeah.
change
Yeah.
up here in the house. We're all going to sleep in the
Great little
basement tonight."
adventure, yeah.
And then later that evening, I said, like, that wasn't happening. I'm like, "Mom, Dad, aren't we going to sleep in the basement tonight?" And it was, and they said, "No, we're not. We're just going to sleep in our regular beds tonight." And I didn't find out until years later that was actually the very height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and my parents were half expecting a nuclear war that night.
My
Right?
gosh.
So, and then of course it was the 60s, right? So,
Yes.
and I was a pretty aware kid and
Mhm.
watching a lot of TV, and, you know, the Beatles were very exciting.
Ah, yes.
But also
That
those
first
are
show,
the-
Ed Sullivan and the Beatles coming to America.
well, you know, I couldn't stay up. That was past my bedtime, so I didn't actually watch the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, but I knew they were on that night, and I was, and at school the next day, that's all anybody was talking about. But I didn't
Yeah.
actually get to see it myself. But
Yeah.
but more than that, it was the whole '60s thing. You
Yes,
know, there
yes.
was that was the beginnings of the environmental movement, of the women's movement, civil rights, all that kind of stuff.
Yes, yes.
I remember when Martin Luther King was killed, and
Yes.
and
Another great man.
and
Great soul.
Bobby Kennedy and all that stuff, right?
Yes.
Malcolm X and
Yes.
all that stuff, and then of course in Ontario here we had that show. There was that show. Do you remember that show? Here Come the '70s.
Mm,
Anyways, it was a great show, and it was on in the late '60s, and I went to Expo '67.
oh my gosh. Yes.
Okay, so that was an amazing experience, and but I was aware of all these things, and that sort of just wanted to see there must be some way for us to do something about all these things, right?
Yes.
And so,
And you were hardly 10 years old before then, and you were already contemplating these.
well, I was very serious. I know I joke a lot now, but that's just because I'm so serious, Hilton. If I didn't make jokes,
So
I'd-
you harmonize.
I'd
You're
go
balancing
bananas.
yourself out now. And
yeah. So, anyway, so when I graduated so I took business at school, at university.
how come you took business?
Well, I didn't really know what I wanted to
Okay.
do. Actually, I did want to do media. That's what I really wanted to do,
Yes.
right?
All right.
But I didn't want to, and I sort of thought about taking music at
Yes.
university,
Yes. Yes.
but I just thought business was more practical. And because basically, if you're going to do anything in the world, it has to be a business, right? So that's what I took, and
All right.
and then when I graduated, it was there was no jobs that I wanted.
Right.
Like I remember I didn't have many interviews either. The
Yeah.
economy was bad that year.
Yeah.
That's my excuse. But I just wasn't, like.
You weren't feeling it.
Well, my classmates they'd go and get a job at Procter and Gamble
Yeah.
or Kmart or Woolco, as some sort of manager or
Yeah.
salesperson. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't even need to go to university to do that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
So there was just nothing that I was really interested in. So I went back to my hometown
Which was,
Welland, Ontario,
yes.
and I
I
started.
visited. It's a pleasant
Well,
place.
Thank you for saying so.
Small. Like, it's as I say, I visited for, I think, a day.
I have most people they don't really like it, but I grew up there, and it was an awesome place to grow up.
I spent a year selling encyclopedias door to door when I was 17.
in Welland.
Not in Welland, but I spent a day or two there.
Oh yeah.
And-
Were you working with a newfie by any chance?
Not that I remember or know of, no.
Because I remember one day there was a knock on the door, and the guy he was selling encyclopedias, and I go, I don't know. I just got talking to the guy, and I go, oh, what are you from, Newfoundland?
Uh-huh.
And he goes, Newfoundland. He said, you're the only person in Ontario that said Newfoundland the way that the Newfies say it. Newfoundland. People say Newfoundland or Newfoundland or whatever.
Yes.
But I just, anyway, so I just wondered if you might know this guy. But,
No, but it's great to see you are honoring people way back when.
Yeah. So, anyways, I went back. I started a business. It, of course, didn't really work out. I mean, I was actually trying to do the same thing then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then I came to Toronto, and I worked as a courier, which was great. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And because you're free, you're on the road.
Yes.
I love driving, so
Yes.
it was a great. My first couple years in Toronto were like a whole new world, all new friends, new everything, like a whole new life. Right, I just left my old life behind, came to Toronto, made a ton of new friends.
That was in the 80s?
That was in '86 is when I came to
Sure,
Toronto.
got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, anyways, then as soon as I really could do something that I really wanted to, as it was I just said, how do you affect change in the world? And that was through media.
Yes.
And at the time, which was in the early '90s, and it was tied in with my band at the time.
Yes.
It was about we started a newspaper,
And it was called?
It was called Trans Forum,
Yes.
right? The idea of being a forum for transformation.
Yes.
And
It's taken, I think that may have many more extended meanings today than it did then.
Actually, and even then we got some of those,
Yes.
right?
And what an infinite world for us to cherish and treasure the diversity and our ability to harmonize with it all.
Everything's equal.
I'm careful of that. Forcing everything to be equal is also a tyranny.
No,
If
it's-
everything is equitable, everything has its respective value in everyone.
My tongue is kind of in my cheek
Oh?
sometimes
Huh.
when I said that one, yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I've just admired what I find, this, dedication and in its own way meticulous effort and work, to establish, that channel. And you started with the magazine, and I think there's been rumors of coming out with both an e-magazine and maybe a print, and a handful of things that we've even discussed. What would you like to discuss now or share in terms of where you're currently at or would like to be, or is there a few other pieces you'd like to, give us backup for and then come to now and future?
Well, one of the things that I've just actually been kind of arrived at just this week in terms of all that is because, part of my vision for that channel is to embed that channel, the media stream, within a social network. Ideally with hundreds of millions of users, right? Well, no, because one of the problems we had to solve when creating
Yes.
that channel or any kind of internet media is that you, and I've said this before, but you have to do 4 things all at once. You have to have an audience. You have to build an audience.
Yes.
You have to have content.
Yes.
You have to have a technical infrastructure, and you need a revenue model.
Right.
You need all 4 things all at once, right? So part of my answer to how do you get an audience is what? If you embedded that channel on the front page of Facebook, well, you'd have a pretty big audience. So that the idea of a social network being associated with that channel was in part addressing that need to create an audience, being one of the 4 pillars of internet broadcasting. But I also came at it from another point of view because
Just prior to that,
Yeah.
do you also mean, as an example, Facebook, you know, bless them and their success and their wisdom unfolding. Do you also mean that it could be, a component or a user in Facebook that has 10 million or more, fans? Would that work equally well, or you need to be right
No.
at the beginning of Facebook? Or can it
well,
just
no,
be in-
because I'm coming at it. That's to address the need for that channel to generate an audience.
Okay, universal.
But I'm also approaching it from another point of view because before we launched that channel, I was involved with, I had an office in this building where I was trying to launch that channel for years. Because the first time we actually did electronic media was when I was doing the newspaper in like 1995, I think, and we
Yes.
had a pirate radio station. So I realized that I wanted to do this as a business using streaming media and needed the internet to evolve and all
Yes.
that. And so
So it's over 20 years that you've been, like 2.5 decades, a quarter century you've been working towards this.
Yeah, well, arguably my whole life.
Yeah.
But so I was involved with the Toronto Freenet.
They began in this building too,
Well,
didn't
no,
they?
they didn't. I brought them into the building.
It's
But-
quite historic here with our man-driven elevators. Has there ever been a woman driver?
No.
We're gonna have to change that.
But
Maybe not.
So I was involved with the Freenet they were trying to be like, how do you make the internet free? Should the internet be free? This was something they were trying to address.
Yes.
And they were subsidized basically by Rogers. And so that subsidy came to an end, so they had to kind of reinvent their model. I helped them kind of go through that process. And then also I was also interested in just, we live in a real environment, and that I was studied McLuhan too.
Yes.
So, so we live in an environment that includes our technology.
Yes.
And so, as McLuhan said, man invents his tools, and then his tools shape
Yes.
man, right? So, what we've seen since the internet, we were running a business as the internet evolved. I mean, I remember when we got our first computer, when we got our first internet, and all that kind of stuff, and I saw how those tools were evolving. And I got a job actually at a technology startup in like 2000, and they were trying to, anyway, my mind was working all around this idea of interface. What is the interface? So what is going to be effective in terms of and what it's got to be about, what kind of tools are we going to use that are going to help us achieve our human objectives, right?
Yes.
And I did design a social network. It's not like Facebook. It's quite different than Facebook. I won't get into the details here. I think I've shared some of those with you before. But what I came to realize this week is that it's not just our software, our operating systems, our hardware. It's all of that. And it's how it's like the chair we sit in, it's the desk we're at, it's the culture that we're in. All that is part of our interface, right? And really, when we hear stories like that that young people are really not doing very well these days because they're so locked into their handheld devices, their phones or whatever. I don't know to what extent that is actually true, but to any extent that it is true, then we need to think about what kind of environment collectively we are designing, and if we're not doing it consciously,
Then we're
and if it's
designing it
leading- but
unconsciously, and
if it's leading to social disaster and cultural decline and decay, then we're certainly not benefiting ourselves. So what do we do if that's the case? Then we better do something about it,
Yes.
right? And people are starting to sound these alarms, including former Facebook execs who are saying, don't use social media. Or another interesting insight that I've come upon recently by Jaron Lanier. Are you familiar with that guy?
I'm not.
He's a big Silicon Valley, more than a technologist, he's also a philosopher. But what he's saying is that, for example, Instagram, which basically replaced Kodak, they had 250,000 employees and they all made a middle class wage, right?
Yeah.
It's been replaced by Instagram that has maybe 12 people working in its office. But now Instagram's worth more than Kodak doesn't even exist anymore or whatever. But you know what I mean? It's like these new disruptive companies can come and replace entire companies with huge ecosystems of employees and stakeholders with very few people. Well, we lose all those middle class jobs then, right? So what does that mean? Well, one of the things Jaron Lanier says that part of the value of Instagram is part of that value, most of that value is actually due to its millions of users. So Instagram wouldn't be worth anything if nobody used it. So all those users of Instagram contribute to its value, but they don't receive formal rewards.
Yes.
Right? So what Jaron Lanier is advocating is a formal reward structure for these companies. In other words, Facebook, they own all the data. They make all the money from the advertising. They use addictive gaming strategies to keep people addicted to their, to Facebook. But they're the ones that are actually hurting people, and yet benefiting economically.
Yes.
So what Jaron Lanier is advocating is formal rewards for those stakeholders that, through their participation, enhance the value of those networks. So that's something I'd like to build into.
Is there a model that you would have or begin to test or employ?
I think that because we have blockchain technology nowadays and cryptocurrencies, I think that it's an excellent opportunity to kind of marry those concepts.
So in order to have that now for that channel, in these divine times, what would need to be done, and when could it be launched, and what could be expected from that, as a possibility that would benefit, many, and who would those many be? Well,
I really think that there's a real need for, I think there's a real need for people to find their purpose and their passion in life, and to be able to monetize that so they can live their lives doing what they love best.
Right.
Because I think if you were able to make that work
for everyone,
then people would be happy because they're using
they're fulfilled.
The gifts.
They're challenged and fulfilled.
They're using their gifts, and they're being fulfilled intrinsically through the work that they're doing, but also they're able to pay the bills, right?
Yeah. I think it's key for us to pay attention to setting ourselves up to be healthily challenged. And I say that, stress, that good stress of some physical, emotional, mental, and and even spiritual and economic. Sharpening of some new disciplines or improvement disciplines for every citizen of our society, so that we shift from sovereign irresponsibility and mismanagement, each one is a sovereign being, to then, acknowledge, yes, and I'm learning how to be sovereign as self-sustaining, as self-supporting, contributing to however small or large a community and constituency each individual capacity will allow.
Well, I'm thinking what I'd like to see is, because if we talk about that as a goal,
Yes,
right?
yes.
The goal of being prosperous.
Yeah, sovereign
And-
interdependence, prosperous communities.
And doing our highest work that we can do with the gifts that we've been given,
Yeah.
then I think there's a bit of a. I think we can design a tool. Like the thing is, the systems out there don't support that necessarily, right?
But
And
the
so-
new systems that have yet to be created or are about to be created can, and this is what I'm envisioning that you're working on
But somebody's
doing.
got to create it, right?
Right.
And so this is what I would like to create.
Me too. Let's get at it.
And you do that by creating formal tools
Yeah.
within, say, an application
Yes.
to help people. Well, and the people are at different levels of,
Yes.
of their understanding even of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, wherever they're at, do they need to identify what their gifts are?
Mm-hmm.
Do they need to figure out what they want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
And what they can do.
and is there a market for that? Or if there isn't, how do you create a market
Yeah.
for
Or
that?
is there a value?
Yeah. So to formalize a way of identifying those things, and through that process is setting goal setting, whatever that happens to be, such that by the time you're finished going through the wizard, you've created your business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's and you know what you have to do. It's got project management built into it, so that because so
When you
that,
said going through the wizard or your wizard,
Yeah.
could you elaborate?
well, like wizards, like on internet, right? Any kind of it's a wizard. You
Yeah.
just answer a bunch of questions and
Yes.
zap. Now
Yeah.
you've got your thing, right?
All right, got it.
So this is like a wizard approach. You fill in the wizard, zap. There's your business.
Yes.
Now your business. Now you know what you're doing. You know what your products are.
Yes.
You know what your prices are, and people can find them. And
Yes.
And let's go and provide a transaction mechanism too.
Yes.
So, yeah, I just think that Facebook is too indirect, and people are there's a lot of Facebook fatigue right now. It's just because you go on there, and people need to monetize their time. That's
Yes.
what people need to do. The economy of the future, I think, is one where people are going to be, entrepreneurship is going to be very important. And
It's what
so we
we're
need
actually contributing, not gossip or tripe or
Exactly.
or-
Yeah, because all that stuff is so. It doesn't really matter. What
A little of it
matters
is great just
what
for
matters
some.
is I got to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
Gonna have to do some work,
Yeah.
and I need to monetize my time, and
Right.
that's what.
Is it monetizing our time or monetizing some of our value?
It's all that. It's all
Okay.
that. But
Yeah.
we need to find a way to. We need some tools that can really make that happen efficiently and effectively. And I don't think Facebook is that tool.
All right. Is there anything that we can do or that channel can do to assist Facebook, or that you're envisioning, or what are some of the next steps that you would like to see as initiatives?
Well, I'd like to. There are some tools out there now that potentially I'm looking at. Because you think, oh, I'm going to build Facebook. Well, what do you need to do that? You need to have a team of programmers or whatever it is you think you might need, right? But if it's true what they said in the movie, you know, they just built something in their college dorm and it caught on.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
For whatever reason. So I think that there's so many tools on the internet now that are like so much wealth of new innovation and tools on the internet that it's probably someone without any coding skills can even build something, at least a prototype, right?
Yes. So in your vision for that channel and the resources or the opportunities, what are some of the ones that you feel could be taken on this year? And then what are some of the other ones that you'd like to establish, or build or grow, initiate next year? And here we are, just approaching September 2018.
Well, that channel has always been designed to be a profitable business.
Yes.
And it's been...
how's the design work so far?
I think it's worked well enough.
It's got us here,
We're
yes.
not losing millions of dollars every year like the Globe and Mail
yes.
or any other traditional media outlet.
Yes.
We've been paying our way every step of the way. So
what's it going to take now for the next stride or triumph? Success?
Well, we do need some capital.
Yes.
And we need somebody out there who's who can actually kind of understand what our vision is, because I really think that when I look at print, for example,
Yes.
and you hear stories like La Presse in Montreal is not printing anymore, right? Because of course the printing and the distribution is very costly,
Yes.
right? But when I look at what our model is for print here, and I know you kind of mentioned being online, people can't believe we're actually considering print, but they don't realize where that sits in our overall business model and why it makes more sense to print. It makes more sense for us to actually print, right? But
Could you speak about what it is that what we're going to print, or what you'd like to print, and what we could look forward to, and when we might look forward to it, and what it will do?
Well, really what it's about is that it's about business models. So
Is there a title for this print publication yet?
it's called That Channel.
That Channel. All right. That'll be a
Because
little
brand
newspaper format?
consistency is important.
Yes. Very good.
But for example, if you look at any traditional media, whether it's CTV or Globe and Mail or whatever, the real product, this is again a Marshall McLuhan insight, is the audience. It's the audience that's being sold to the corporate interests,
Yes.
right? So how does Globe and Mail make money? They sell ads. Well, why do they sell ads? Because those advertisers understand who the audience of the Globe and Mail is.
There's over 1 million viewers.
Right? So the real product there is the audience.
Yes.
So all the content of
Just keeps the
media
audience, keeps coming
is
back.
designed to maximize revenue for the shareholders. That's just the way it is by definition. Okay? So and this is why I think our culture is so cynical, because people growing up in this culture, even if they can't articulate it, they understand at a gut level that they are being exploited. When they're watching television, they're being exploited. When they're using Facebook, they're being exploited. And when they read a newspaper, they're being exploited. And that's why our culture is so cynical. That's my analysis. So,
Is there a solution,
well,
correction solution?
so the thing is that, so the media,
Yeah.
okay, which is supposed to be one of the, the estates, the four estates of a democratic society,
Yeah.
is not really. And as the money gets tighter and tighter, just
So it's
because of
hardly
the
free
nature,
press, free speech,
because of the
it's-
nature of our money system, and
Yeah.
that's a whole other topic. Okay, but it's not fulfilling its duty
Yes.
as one of the estates of a democratic society because because of its business model, which is by definition there to exploit its audience, not to serve the democracy or the common good, right? So, so I think we need to start by changing up the business model of the media. So that's why instead of selling advertising, which really means you're selling the audience, you are instead, we need to create content that doesn't exploit the audience, but creates content that serves the audience.
Yes.
Okay? While at the same time realizing that now we're in a peer-to-peer environment.
Yes.
Because the internet's peer-to-peer. So it's not a one-way communication from a group of elite educated people to a mass of relatively uneducated consumers of media. We're all producers and consumers,
Yes.
and we're all essentially on an equal footing in a peer-to-peer environment.
Or at least potentially equal footing, according to our capacities and contributions.
Yeah. So, so that channel has always been designed to create media to serve its audience, and also the people. We're peer to peer. It's not just an audience, because most of the people that come on the station also watch the station. And it's not. There's not a big audience out there that's not going to be. Everyone who's watching this should actually come on here and tell their story about what they have to offer.
Right.
Or what they're trying to do or achieve, right? That's really the whole purpose of that channel.
So in that invitation, if there were 1,000 people that were inspired as a result of hearing a glimpse of this, to come in and tell their story in 20 minutes or 24 minutes, how would they do that, so that, it was great for them and great for that channel, so that we're actually supporting? What would need to show up?
Well, they need to show up,
Yes.
even though we can do it by Skype.
Yes.
And they sit down and come on your show or come on my show. And
Okay. And is there a membership or something where they can contribute to the?
I mean, this is it's been a real challenge because we've implemented a membership model just because we're trying to, we are creating a de facto community,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
until this community can be defined enough and prosperous enough
Yes.
in its own right, we're just asking that, we're just asking that people, we put a bundle of benefits together for people to become members here, and they can use our facilities to help them out, help their businesses out.
Okay.
And-
Here's something I'd like to do with you, Hugh.
Okay.
And to our audience, we'll be ready to form, something called Angel's Den. There's some other great, venture investors, in the sea there are all kinds of fish, and there's the big fish, and then there's the dolphins. We like to work with everyone type thing. So this seems like a dolphin angel's den. And I'm inviting any angel entrepreneurs to reach in, call in, email Hugh, info@thatchannel.com or Hugh@thatchannel.com.
Info's good.
info@thatchannel.com, or me, Hilton 101 at iCloud.com. I'm just getting some new domains. Notwithstanding, if you can see the ability to say, hey, I could be an angel investor, collaborator, we welcome hearing from you. Tell your friends if you think someone else is going to be the right angel. And for all of everyone else, maybe we can be angels working with you. And that's a little bit of what I've seen happen here over the years. But I think we can actually begin to structure it through both the newspaper, the online, and the inline. I say inline, that means you, our audiences, showing up and then sharing your stories and your value and contributions, and us exchanging and creating this dynamic exchange. Have I got a little bit of the vision, Hugh?
Well, yeah. Well, if you can get some of these investors in here, that'd be good. But
All right.
yeah,
All right. So that'll be my mandate for this next week and this next month to attract, to invite and attract, healthy, healthy angel investors or investor inquiries.
and I just want to say,
Yeah.
because I think some of these traditional media companies out there, as I was saying, right, especially the print, which
Yes.
is really struggling these days.
Mhm.
I think if we could take some of what we're doing here and apply it to that business, then I think we could have I really think we could really turn the print industry around. Don't forget, I started in print, right? We started printing.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work at the Sun. I've worked for the Globe. I've worked for the Star. I've worked for all the major newspapers in the city. And and if they are struggling with print, I mean, I think I know how to turn print around using what we're doing here at that channel.
So integrating both.
I would love to have a conversation with somebody who's trying to turn their print operations around.
And this would be more tabloid print versus magazine print.
Well, I like low cost printing. I think that we don't. I think that high gloss print is a waste, because these days we got as much high color, high gloss as we want on the internet. So why do we
Right.
need it in paper? We
No.
don't really need that much paper.
No.
So like low cost print is, I'm a big fan of that.
Could each page be artified sufficiently so that it can be effectively recycled as placemats or this or that?
Well, we used to try to do stuff like that, Hilton. It's you have to work within the. There are constraints, production constraints.
Yes, yes.
Depending, you got to deal with your cost scenarios as well, right? I mean, potentially you could do stuff like that, and then of course you have to assess, is there a market for that sort of thing? But I'm certainly willing to look at any specific concrete proposal, and maybe it's a great idea.
Excuse me. They say we sneeze on the truth, so it must be a great idea,
Maybe
particularly
that's
when we
your
do.
automatic timer kicking in, Hilton. Chris just gave me the time.
Okay.
The time.
Perfect. This is always such a pleasure being here, and it's so welcoming and inviting, and you've established that, and I've benefited from that, and Chris, behind the camera, thank you for the magnificence that you bring forward, and there are others, Dee Dee here, and others, just so many of the community that just show up sometimes to volunteer.
Yeah, we've got a great bunch of people here at that channel, and we've been blessed over the years, and thanks to all of them, or we wouldn't be here.
Thank you, all of you, for helping us be here, and thank you for tuning in. Hugh Reilly, Hilton Milan, Divine Times, and that channel. We'll see in the light. Let your divine shine. Thank you, Hugh.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Wow.